What if the only thing separating a struggling business from a billion-dollar revenue engine was one repeatable go-to-market system? Welcome to the Glovisor Podcast, where we explore business growth, communication, and personal development through real conversations with people that make an impact. Our guest has generated over $1 billion in revenue, built first ever sales for companies across 140 engagements, transformed underperforming divisions into top performers, and advised enterprises and governments around the world. He's a fractional CRO, GTM strategist, and the author of Real World Selling, The Art of Selling Conversation, with nearly 4 decades of real world results. Glovisor welcomes James Hayden. Hey, James.
Joe, hey, good to be here today.
It's a pleasure. Looking forward to the conversation.
Me too. Let's dig in.
Right. So, James, tell us what you do.
What I do is work for organizations, and individuals. I work with some smaller organizations that are very much founder-led, in some cases, 1 or 2 people in the organization. I work with those organizations at a high level to put together repeatable, scalable processes that generate revenue. So that sounds simple. There's a heck of a lot to it. And that's the work I've done essentially for 40 years. What happened was people started calling me out and saying, hey, what do you do? Can you tell me what you do to turn around a division or find revenue for this new product? Nobody else could. And I just would say, it's kind of intuitive. I come in and something doesn't look right or feel right or smell right. In the company, I just change it. So one of the big shifts for me was I had stumbled on a sales methodology that happened to be one that a lot of people had utilized, and somebody here in the Seattle area had been using for years and years and years. And it took my experimentation to discover that sales methodology. So the founder of that methodology here in Seattle, Hal Thorsvig, came to me, and I used him for some turnarounds I did to, instill that in organizations because I was the leader of the sales team. I brought him to do the training. And he said, hey, I'm writing a book. I need some IP that I want to publish out there. I need somebody who's a type A like you, 1. And 2 is somebody that can bring in some real world examples into the methodology and talk about successes and I don't call them failures, but tuition payments. And I've got a few of them in the book, and how that's done. So it took us just 4.5 years to publish the book. And Hal's promise to me was, you can go in and turn around these organizations, get revenue ramped up in every organization I'd been working in, except 1. He said, right now, you're what I'd call an unconscious competent. And by writing this down, you'll move to being a conscious competent. And it made a huge difference. So I'm, I guess, somewhat more conscious now about that. But then I rewrote the book in 2023. It was published initially in 2013 because the world had changed a lot in those 10 years, especially around utilizing technology. People aren't picking up the phone all the time, doing cold calling and sales. And some other big shifts had happened in terms of partnerships and channels. 70 to 75% of technology sales go through a partner channel. So navigating through that and direct sales was really important. And that had been the inverse in 2013 when we originally wrote the book. So some big changes in terms of how to utilize technology and generating revenue. And then the second piece was how many partners are involved. And that's really a different approach than direct sales. Recruiting and selecting the right partner, onboarding them, and then optimizing what they're doing. So there were some substantial shifts, but it's very much is, as you called out in the beginning, very much a system. And really from the beginning to the time a company exits or whatever you're looking for in terms of success, finding that repeatable, scalable process is very much a system. And I find that founders and people involved in corporations and other businesses, if they write down what they're doing, there's a magic to journaling it, if you will. Some people call it journaling, and I don't know, that feels a little bit soft to me, but really writing down, here's how my day's gone, here's what happened, here are the challenges I faced, and then let it go. And your mind has a way of being a goal-seeking device, will find a way to overcome that.
Wow, you've given us a lot there, which is great. I'm looking forward to finding out more, and especially on the personal side, because there's so much there to find out. But before we do that, can you get us on the same page? What is a fractional CRO? And then the go-to-market, what does that actually mean?
Every business is in some go-to-market stage. So go-to-market is the way you take your product or services to market. And it really involves how you're promoting your product, what your sales team looks like, what your product looks like. So finding that right product to market fit is important. The go-to-market, you could boil it down simply and just say it's finding the right person with the right message at the right time. Now, again, that sounds simplistic, but there's a heck of a lot to it. I've been CRO, headed up sales and marketing, and in several organizations. And I can come in now because of what I've seen in my career in terms of pattern recognition, and then take those patterns, integrate that to develop a new pattern for a company that'll get them to success.
Now, every successful entrepreneur has had a defining moment. What inspired you to pursue this career path?
There are people with certain athletic ability or certain proclivities or interests, right? And from the time I was young, I had some interesting parents that raised me. My dad was an engineer, and my mom was one of the first female real estate brokers in Seattle. So, she was taking me to Zig Ziglar and Tom Hopkins and Jim Rohn and motivational speakers like that when I was younger. And there were a few things that motivated me. When I was a little kid, I was selling butter toffee peanuts door to door. And so, I was building markets then, and it wasn't enough that I'd earned my way to camp. But one of my childhood friends' family didn't have a lot of money. Then I earned his way to camp, and I earned part of another kid's way to camp, because I just like getting out there and doing that gratification of finding somebody to buy something that's of value, even though they're butter toffee peanuts, or later it was newspaper routes, that kind of thing, was really a part of me. And I had a real need to prove myself. I was adopted at birth, had some insecurities. My parents that raised me were wonderful people, but I always felt I was a little bit different than other people. And I talked to so many other executives that have, maybe they may not be adopted, but it may be something else, where there's an event that occurred in their life that could have broken other people. And I, there were things, I didn't have a perfect upbringing in that didn't define me. It gave me so much motivation, because I wanted to prove that I belonged and that I was acceptable. And it led to I outworked everybody. From the time I was in college on, I worked harder than anybody else. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's really, really important that we understand on the psychological side of it, who we are, what's motivating us, and those insecurities. And sometimes those insecurities can be motivation we need to be better people, to prove ourselves, as long as you don't let it beat you down.
Absolutely. And I think pretty much everyone has had adversity at some different level in their lives, but some people, as you mentioned, can either destroy you or it can define you and make you who you are today. And I think that's one of the reasons that you are so good at identifying these patterns, because you develop these extra skill that others haven't been able to. So that's a big plus. Um, product placement. Is that something that you're thinking that's going to continue more as television and brands are working together?
I don't believe product placement will ever go away. It's just, it's in our nature to look at that. And I remember when one of my daughters was first going into kindergarten, her teacher said at the time, just so you know, it takes an adult at least 5 times to hear a message before they really get it cognitively. It sinks in. A child, it takes 10 times. So if you hear me repeat myself, there's a method to that. So that repetition is, I believe it's scientific, but we do look to other people as examples in fashion or sports or wellness, those types of things. I just believe if anything, we're accelerating that with the use of social media and AI.
So now, was your daughter's teacher correct? Do we need those 5 touches in order to purchase a product, or do we need more than that?
We may need more than that, Joe. I mean, it's one of the stats I use with sales organizations is it takes 12 to 20 outreaches for a salesperson to get a contact with somebody. And so, the design I've seen in what I call multimedia outreaches, that is, text, email, social media, and phone calls when you're building a business, building a prospect, is it takes a while before they get to know you. Now, if you're with Microsoft or Amazon or something, that's a little bit different. Everybody knows who they are. But most of the people, and I believe most of the people in this audience and most of the organizations I work with, it could be an unknown category, and even within that category, probably a brand that not everybody knows. So it probably takes more contacts and more outreaches before people get that they have an issue. And that's one of the big things in building a market for a company is building the category demand, because a lot of times you'll come in with, gosh, this is going to be the biggest thing since Amazon, but people don't know they have a problem. So in many cases, you have to build that category demand and really build that, you've got a problem, and we can solve that, or you will have a problem and we can solve it before it becomes a problem. And then, so the answer is, why do I need this solution? And then the next step would be, why do I need your solution as a company? Answering those 2 questions are absolutely pivotal. And until you answer the first one, you can't get to the second one. Same gate there. So I mean, if you're starting to see a pattern, there is a systematic approach to building a market, depending on what the product is. And every organization is a little bit different in terms of that ratio of what it takes in contacts and messaging and that whole approach.
Now, who is your ideal client? Is it only Inc. 1000 companies, or can someone who is just developed a brand new product and they want to bring that to market, can they contact you as well?
The organizations I've been working with the last few years have been founders. And for example, now I'm working with a 3-person company in building management software and building that market for them. Now I'm doing some of the individual selling, but in the spirit of coaching the people in the organization how to do that. They haven't had a methodology to fall back on. The other critical piece that I hit on with founders is the founder gets to a point, and nobody can sell with the passion a founder does, right? In the marketplace, and you've got the person right in front of you that can, if you're a client, can answer all the questions. They can make the decisions. They don't have to get back to Bob in finance or Sally in finance to get an approval right there on the spot. And that trust they can build like nobody else can in the marketplace. Now the difficulty becomes at that, I would say 10 to $20 million revenue mark is who do I need to bring in that can take over that sales effort? Because the founder should be the visionary of the company especially from that point on, and pulling together those disparate pieces, the finance and the operations we're talking about. So getting that information out of a founder's head and into the sales organization is not an easy task. That's the reason I recommend writing down what you do or keyboarding it, whatever. Get it down there so you can start to build and you can start to see that there is a process.
If one of our listeners wanted to work with you today, what would that journey look like?
We could schedule a half an hour session or so, talk about their business, see if there's a fit. Maybe they could do some things without me, which is okay. But if I could guide them in that direction, that's okay. Or we put together a plan based on our discussion. That's a roadmap with prioritized initiatives that will take them from where they are today to where they want to be in terms of revenue. And that could be, do they have the right strategy in place? Are they getting the right message to the right people at the right time? Like I talked about earlier, do they have the right people in place? And I can test salespeople in terms of their behaviors to see if they will sell within a certain category or not. If people are interested in that, you can reach out to me about that.
Very often when you talk about going to market, everyone is very heavy on how do we get that product to the market and to the public, but they don't really talk much about the other end of it, which is the founders and how they're going to sell that. Within your recommendations, do you have specific benchmarks that takes it from, that it's specific level that early adopters like the product and you decide from there that it's ready to move on to the next stage?
Generally, that's revenue based. So you can start to see it with an uptick, and with that upward curve like that, where you start to see adoption. But what it will do, if it's working the right way, is you'll start to see people who are in that early majority on the product adoption life cycle. You'll start getting pinged by people that are, you could really categorize as more that mass market, because they'll start to see it and they'll start to hear about it in their own marketplace or with their competitors or competitive set.
Can you share with us a success story of someone that's worked with you?
There was a company I was brought in to in a very, very fractional role to build their first vertical markets. So we worked on automotive market. I'd had some experience in that. We worked on healthcare, and those were the two primary markets we were going after. It was a company called ZipWhip, based here in Seattle, and they had really interesting technology. For your landline phones, they were text enabling those. So for a small business, they have a landline phone, but they can receive text. So it's another channel in telecommunications, which was really cool. I worked with them to build the first vertical markets. And healthcare, we split up a couple different ways. So there were really three initial markets. They asked me to come in and get momentum. And we had one of the first auto dealerships to work with us. They text enabled all their landline phones. They had an executive from Amazon that was looking at bringing their car in for maintenance. The service technician gets it and said, "Hey, I know you're really looking for the 7 series that had this and this and this option on it. We just got one in. Would you like information on it?" Sends a text back. Anyway, it goes on and on and on. The entire transaction was done virtually by text. So the only time that executive came into the dealership was to turn in the old car and get the keys to the new car. That was it. ZipWhip, I did work on and off with them for a few years. They were acquired 4 years ago by Twilio. for 850 million. So, it was one of those things. A lot of people had a lot of impact on their business, but it's one of those things that really got the party started for them. So that's one.
That's a great story.
Thank you.
If listeners remember only one thing from today's conversation, what do you hope that message is?
That there is a system from the beginning through whatever your end of your business, whether it's an exit or whatever, that you can build. There's very much a systems approach, and that may sound counterintuitive to people, but there are things you can do to build a system to find that repeatable, scalable revenue. Once you do that, you can start you feed your money into the things, your investments into the things that get you the greatest returns. So you can see if, like, it could be Google ads, or it could be LinkedIn posts, or it could be having an inside salesperson. If I have 3 inside salespeople, I'm going to get this. So you start tracking your business to the point where you can quantify what you do, and you're fine tuning that engine. Think of it like an engine in a car, for example. You're just keeping it tuned up the whole time. Now it requires tune-ups and it requires maintenance that every few months, like changing your oil, for example. But look at it that way, where there's a systematic approach you can use to build your business. What I recommend is finding that approach, finding your own approach, and then go. Just there's a way to do that. It takes courage to build a business. That's the biggest thing you'll need. But find that approach, become a student of it. You certainly can. Glovisor has a lot of available resources. You can come to my website. I'm also working with a group that has 2,000 founder members based out of Miami it's just going live. We have a complete approach of everything you need as a startup, called Start Hub Academy. If that supports your efforts, that could be good. I wish I had the tools in place that we have today. When I was starting out my career, all this stuff about jobs being taken away, in the entrepreneur side of businesses, starting businesses, I have never seen a time in my life with as many opportunities as there are today.
Interesting. Because you have so many different perspectives on what AI is doing and losing jobs. Are there going to be more opportunities in the near future? And I'm glad that you're so optimistic.
I'm absolutely positive about it. So, and if anybody wants to have a further conversation, you and I could, or happy to discuss that with people. The important piece is to keep in mind that also, to be human, but we're also, trust is a big part of the way we do business with each other. And AI doesn't build trust. People build trust. That's it.
That's great advice. Where can an audience connect with you and learn more about your work and continue this conversation?
I have a website. It's James B. Hayden, HAYDEN.com. You can text me, 206-915-0458. LinkedIn profiles under Jim Hayden. And that would be the best thing. Thank you.
Can't build any more trust than giving out your cell phone number. Well, James, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights. We appreciate your time, your insights, and the value that you brought to our audience.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, it was a real pleasure. Really enjoyed your show.
Thanks, everyone, for listening. If this episode inspired you, share it with someone who needs it. And don't forget to follow the Glovisor Podcast for more conversations that make an impact. Till the next time.